A Canal for Albany, an Albany Waterway project. This is a map of Albany that was drawn in 1634 by a Dutch cartographer. It's a pretty accurate map. It still exists. It's ink on linen, belongs to the New York State Museum, and occasionally they get it out for the public to see. It's loaded with details. This is a close-up of the map in the area near where Fort Orange was originally built. My name is Len Tantello, and I'm an artist. I've been painting historical scenes for the last 40 years, and this is a painting that I made of Fort Orange in Albany that was in part based on that map that we were just looking at. Again, here's another map of Albany drawn by Wolfgang Romer, a colonel in the British Army. Very detailed map. Romer was quite a skilled surveyor. This map is so accurate that you can lay this map on top of a street map of Albany today and it will match up almost exactly. The map was drawn in the late 1690s. From that map, I made this drawing depicting Albany, the fort, and the original stockade, along with most of the buildings that were in the community at that time. Again, another map of Albany, this one drawn in the 1750s by another British engineer, very detailed map. That map was used in part to create this image of Albany, looking at the city from the east side of the Hudson River. Again, another map of Albany, this time the 1770s, 1780 time period. That map was used to create this painting. This is one of the largest paintings I ever made. In its frame, it's about 10 feet long. But there, again, you can see the city and its connection with the river. Another map of Albany, this one drawn in the 1860s, depicting the Albany Basin. The city is now expanding, more streets, more people. And this is the drawing, this is the painting that I made depicting that Albany. So most people, when I show them this, they wonder, why am I showing you all these maps? And why am I talking about Albany and all these different time periods? And the reason for that is that it's that arc of shoreline. The Hudson River was much wider back in the times when these maps were created than it is today, nearly twice as wide as it is today. The river started being filled in the 1900s, and by the end of the 20th century, there is no indication at all of where this arc of shoreline ever existed. So in 1995, I had been collecting for some time these booklets, these plans that were being made for various improvement projects for the city. Some of them were grand and some of them were more modest. Some involved planting trees and creating small park settings, and others completely redesigning the city. All of them had one thing in common, and that is that none of them effectively improved the city. They all, the more ambitious ones, tried to, in the most contorted ways, to bring the city back to the Hudson River. And my thought was, what would happen if you looked at it the other way around? If you tried to bring the river back into the city where it once was. So that kind of started me talking about this idea of bringing vessels in under the highway at the south end of the city and creating a canal up Broadway to some point at the north end of the city and then back out to the river. Well, eventually the plan was presented to just the right person, and it started to get some attention. It was printed up a number of times in the Albany newspapers back in the mid 1990s, and eventually I was asked by the mayor at that time how much money it would take to put together a rough idea, take that idea and put it down on paper. So for the modest sum of $15,000, I was able to put together a small team of good friends, talented engineers, landscape architect, Pat Mahoney, civil engineer, Bruce Heiser, landscape architect, and Tiag Thagarian, an urban planner. And the four of us worked for several months and produced this plan of the city. We had set it up so that we would have, we had two prerequisites. Number one, don't interfere with the highway. Don't interfere with the flow of heavy traffic on the highway. Don't interfere with a single ramp leading in and out of the city. The second criteria was do not tear any buildings down. Do not remove any buildings. Just create this waterway through the city. Now, a number of things have changed since this plan was drawn 25 years ago. There has been some construction, but at that time, this plan satisfied our requirements. We were respectful of the idea of possible archaeological discoveries, and we even thought that some of those potential sites might be incorporated into our design. So 25 years have passed. And in the 25 years, sadly, Albany has really not changed all that much, but a number of other cities have. There have been a number of urban canals constructed in that time period. This is the Canal Side project in Buffalo, a big success for the city. It's been a tremendous boom to the economy, and to the increase in tourism for the city. The Bricktown Canal, a more modest project in Oklahoma. This is a canal that has also reinvigorated a community that had no access to any kind of water of this nature before. The Providence River Walk, this is a major success story. This is a huge canal, runs through downtown Providence. It's completely transformed that city. They make use of it year-round. Probably the most significant event that takes place there is the water fire event. This is the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, Canada. I show this because 25 years ago, the question that kept being asked was, what do you do with a canal in the wintertime? It's a seasonal thing. Well, in Canada, it's not a seasonal thing, and it isn't a seasonal thing in the northeastern United States either. This is the Rideau Canal at Christmas time, decorated for the holiday. This is the Rideau Canal in the middle of the winter, a busy place, a tremendous activity for wintertime. And this is the Canal Side in Buffalo, doing the same sort of thing, taking advantage of their canal in the cold winter months. This is the San Antonio River Walk, pretty famous canal. This has recharged the economy of San Antonio. San Antonio was probably best known for many, many, many years for being the site of the Alamo. Well, this now represents an equal draw for tourism for that city. And many people from our area have visited the San Antonio Canal and comment on what a wonderful activity and wonderful opportunity it is to enjoy a waterway in an urban environment. Chicago has several canals. This is the Chicago Ship Canal. These are navigable waterways for major vessels and a big part of that city and how it operates. It's wonderful to see something like this going through the middle of a huge metropolitan area. And here we are back in Albany. quite a contrast. Not a very pretty sight, not a pretty way of entering the city. This is the infamous Central Warehouse building. It is catastrophically ugly, and one thing's certain, that it does not get any better the closer you get to this building. It's a decrepit building. It's now covered with graffiti. The inside of the building is pretty much the same kind of abandoned space, but the building is quite strong. It's an amazingly well-built structure. The columns that you see in this picture are 4 feet in diameter, and they're reinforced concrete. The slabs are massive. The ceiling heights are relatively high, 10 and 11 feet on each floor. The interesting thing about the building is that because it is a slab and column structure, the outer walls are basically infills. They can be removed so that just what you have left is this basic sturdy structure. The idea that I thought could be employed in the restoration of this building would be to skin it somehow, to create an exterior facade that was in a way reflective of some of the other buildings in Albany. Now, this is very simple brick and glass facade design. The building is sturdy enough to add another floor onto, or several floors onto. So here I've kind of put a top on the building that could be used as maybe a restaurant or some kind of concourse, maybe for activities and events. Our project, the Canal project, is basically divided into 4 parts, 4 options. Option number 1 is obviously the one that I think would be the most effective, and that would be total transformation. That is to build the canal all at once from the north end to the south end of the city, right down Broadway. That would give us an impact that you see in some of these other locations, like Providence, like Chicago. The track of the canal would be to follow a course through the city, starting at the south end and taking advantage of an existing underpass that already passes below the highway and below the railroad, to then carry it through to the area in front of the SUNY headquarters building down Broadway. There's another option on Broadway where the canal could easily pass back out past the Central Warehouse building and back into the Hudson River. The second option would be to just approach this project from the north end, where Central Warehouse is, an area of the city that is really pretty much underutilized now, but at one point was very active. This is the 1860 circa map of Albany, and at the north end of the Albany Basin, you can see the Erie Canal. This is the entrance of the Erie Canal, Lock 1. The Canal Basin of the 1840s is there. The Waylock is there, and then the canal continues to the north through the lumber district. This is a fascinating part of the project because of, as you can see in this schematic, you could easily come in under the highway from the Hudson River into a restored Lock 1 and restored Erie Canal Basin. And if you were to carry that redevelopment through and improve the appearance of Central Warehouse and possibly add commercial buildings, you could invigorate this space that is pretty much an urban blight and create something like this. The idea here in this conceptual plan was to provide a possible community civic center, maybe, restore the central warehouse building into something that is a lot more pleasing and a lot more contribute more to the aesthetic of the area, and then also provide some possible commercial buildings, plenty of open space, possible open air pavilions that could be used for weddings and family reunions and that sort of thing. A harbor, a marina that might be able to accommodate 60 or 80 vessels, and open land surrounding it that could be used for farmers markets, craft fairs, and that sort of stuff. That's what's represented here in this digital model. That would mean that at this environment at pedestrian level could be transformed into a space like this, a place that is used. Yes, it's used as a harbor, but it's also a gathering place for residents and visitors to the city, a place to go and maybe attend events or be with your friends or just hang out and take in the environment and enjoy the activity that takes place around this setting. Option 3 would be to develop the south end of the Canal waterway system. The south end is home to the D&H building. I think that in terms of impact, this option would probably have the greatest effect on the area. I think that this has the potential of becoming a regional, maybe even national site of great interest. The D&H building is the most beautiful piece of architecture in the central part of New York State. It's an incredible Gothic structure, and because of its design, it seems to have these outreaching wings, almost like arms, encircling that space in front of it. And I could only imagine how beautiful that environment could be as a reflecting pool for that great piece of architecture. What is there now really doesn't achieve anything, really. It's a park, yes, but it's an underutilized park. It seems to me to be the kind of design that was simply put there to occupy a space that no one knew what to do with. And it, even on the middle of a weekday, there doesn't seem to be anyone there. There's also very little traffic on Broadway. So I can just imagine that space being revived and being energized with maritime activity, shopping, dining, all the things that so many of us seek when we go on vacations. I think, a spectacular opportunity in an underutilized space. The fourth option, and probably the easiest one to accomplish in terms of cost, but also important in terms of restoring a landmark, and that would be taking a look at the original Erie Canal. This is the lumber district in Albany. Lock 1. Lock 1 of the canal. It's very well documented. We have many maps, city maps. We know the dimensions of it. We know the location of it. We know so much about this particular feature of the Erie Canal. We know where it's located. And how do we know that it was located there in that exact spot? Because in 2002, two professors from Union College, Andrew Wolf and Dennis Foley, with picks and shovels and the permission of the landowner, dug part of it up. some of the pieces of the canal that they discovered, these components of the canal, weren't even very far down in the ground. Like in this excavation that's about 2 feet deep, you can see the top of the canal lock. This is one of the last photographs of the canal of Lock 1 that was taken before it was buried. It wasn't removed, it was buried. It was just covered over with a parking lot and a city street. This is the way it looked in the 1850s, in the heyday of Albany and the lumber district. In this conceptual plan, you can see the location of the lock, and you can easily understand how it could function as access to the river and access to an entry canal basin. So in this particular option, it would be possible to excavate what was there, excavate the lock, restore it to its function aesthetically, and create a park around it. This would be a way to honor this as a National Historic Site and bring to life what was once such an important part of American culture and American commerce in the 19th century. 1825 was the year that the Erie Canal was finished. In 2 years, in 2025, we're going to be celebrating the 200th anniversary of the completion of the Erie Canal. And what better way could we celebrate that event but to restore that lock and have that lock once again available for the public to teach us a lesson about America in its early development years. So here we are, back to the Albany of pretty much today, a city that really takes very little advantage of the fact that it's on a major river in the United States. And I wanted to kind of close this presentation with that notion of that wonderful arcing shoreline, and that idea that that water could once again be brought into the city and revitalize it, hopefully once again, making it a place that we can all be proud of and a place that we want to invite our friends to come to enjoy with us. So I thank you for listening, and I hope that you give these ideas some thought.